it has been a while since I've used this guy. Back when I started, this was the very first camera I had, my go-to, the Canon T5i. When it was brand new, it was about 800 bucks, including the kit lens, and it fulfilled all my needs. As you can see right now, I'm showing you some old bangers of mine, and my God, have things changed. Obviously, I know how to use cameras a bit better now and get the most out of them. So I thought the other day, why not crack this guy out of retirement and compare him to my GH5? So I reached out to my buddy Elliott and I thought, why not compare this camera to the GH5, shooting him playing the guitar? Obviously, I'm not going to be using the kit lens. I'll be using my current beautiful lens, the Sigma 18-35, and my aperture 120D, which I'm shooting on right now. I'm going to take both cameras, try to replicate the shots as best I can, and do a little side-by-side comparison and see what I can do with this old gem. When looking back at the two videos, I didn't see huge differences, but mainly the differences I found were in the video quality, the video features, the form factor of the camera, and the menus and buttons. When shooting with the Canon, I have to say it felt amazing in my hand. It just fit perfectly and all my thumbs felt great where the buttons are. It has a nice ergonomic feel to it. For such a cheap camera, it feels great. And lastly, with the button and menu navigation, it felt great. It was easy to find things. The only downside maybe would be that there's no custom buttons I can add, but overall, like everything I needed was right at my fingertips. Now obviously with the Canon, the quality is much lower than the GH5, even at 1080p. Just has to do with how many megabits a second it records at, but that's just pretty much what you pay for, right? Sadly, the T5i can only do 1080p up to 30 frames a second, and when you get to 60 frames, it's at 720p. With my work, I really need to get a full HD camera that can shoot slow-mo. And when trying to find the white balance, it was good and I used some of the presets, but when I tried to do the custom, it was a bit of a pain in the ass. What you have to do is take a picture of a white surface under the light in the scene that you're in, and then from there you select that photo in the white balance menu, and the camera reads that and creates a white balance off of what you provide the camera. On the other side with the GH5, all I have to do is aim the GH5 at a white surface and it takes a picture through the viewfinder right there and snaps right onto the white balance I need. And then when exposing, it wasn't that hard, and obviously I think I got it decently well. There's no waveform that shows me the complete IRE scale of the exposure, so when I was trying to expose it properly, all I could base it off of was a histogram. I don't think it got as accurate as I wanted it to be. On top of that, with the video features, there's no real flat color profile, so the dynamic range was pretty harsh. As you can see in the video, a lot of the highlights on his face really like punched out and the blacks were super dark. I found that it was a little too contrasty for my liking and it didn't give me that control when I was editing. And lastly, I know I said it felt good in my hand, but the fact that it's so light, when I was shooting and moving with handheld, it was a little too shaky. And I find with a heavier camera, something more big and robust, it's a lot more smooth when I want it to be. There's less of that micro shake. I like to shoot a lot with handheld because it gives me that space. Like I don't like holding this chunky stabilizer that sometimes gets in the way. With this guy, there's no in-body stabilization. There was a lot of micro shake that I had to go and post and fix with warp stabilizer. Now, when moving to the GH5, the quality just knocked this guy out of the park. It shoots at 100 megabytes per second. That creates a lot clearer, crisper footage that just feels more cinematic and more lifelike. You can shoot at 1080 60 frames a second and even at 10-bit to get that extra color push when in post. It makes for a lot more beautiful imagery that comes out of this, and when we hop into the editing suite, I just have so much control. When I look inside the GH5 for their video features, there's just so much there to work with. For focusing, I can use the focus peaking, which are these little nodes that show up on the viewfinder showing me what's in focus and what isn't. On top of the focus peaking, gives me a digital zoom, and that means when I look at my LCD screen and I'm changing my focus, it zooms in and shows me exactly where on the sensor is being focused, and I can really dial it in much more specifically there. I can use a waveform where it shows me my exposure. The bottom is your blacks and where you're losing information there, and the top is the whites and where you're losing information there. It gives me a much more full idea of what's exposed and what isn't. And the last feature that absolutely knocks this guy out of the park is the in-body image stabilization when I'm shooting a handheld, and eliminates almost all of that micro jitter that I see a lot in this T5i. It's also a big round camera and is heavy, so when you're doing those movements, there's a lot less micro jitter and my hands aren't shaking as much. It seems to be a lot slower of a shake the larger the camera is, and it makes my footage a lot smoother. And then the last point with the GH5 is the menus and buttons are so easy to use. They have a little joystick which I can use on the back of it, and I can create custom buttons. With the customized buttons, I can put my white balance on a certain button, I can change my recording format on a certain button. I can do a lot more, a lot faster with this GH5. There's only really a couple cons with the GH5, one being the autofocus. It's really non-existent and just absolutely horrible on this guy, so I always do manual, which I don't mind. Video, I personally like manual, it gives you a lot more control. Now, obviously, I just said that having a heavy camera makes for smoother footage, but the one downside to that is it's tiring. Your arms get tired, your back gets tired, so you need a couple more breaks, but at the end of the day, I think that's a worthwhile trade-off. So that's a complete breakdown of how I felt during the shooting with the T5i versus the GH5, and now let's hop into the editing portion. What was so great about the T5i is that I pulled the footage right into Premiere, and my god, it looked great right away. With Canon, there's a bit more of a red or orangey tone, and it made the skin tones of Elliott look absolutely luscious and great, so I didn't really have to do much compared to the GH5. Another positive would be, because the footage is at a lower bitrate on the T5i, it was a lot easier to work with in program. There's a lot less slow and laggy moments, and that just made my experience a lot better, but obviously you suffer in the quality department. In the program, the T5i footage just didn't look anywhere near as good as the GH5. It just had a softer, less clear look to it. That's just what you pay for. On top of that, with the T5i, you can only shoot in 8-bit color depth. That makes it a lot harder to push the colors and really get fancy with the color grade. And when adding slow-mo, it was a little tough to make it look nice and smooth. There is a difference between slow-mo between the GH5 and the T5i. Even though both shoot at 60 frames a second, the GH5 just had a smoother look to it. It looked more real and less choppy, even though they were both 60 frames. And when dropping in the GH5 footage, it was just a dream to work with. With the 10-bit color range, the fact that it's at a higher bit rate, and that the slow-mo is not choppy, it all just made the experience of editing it just smooth. Now, the one downside, like I mentioned earlier, is the colors that come out of the GH5. They tend to be more of like a green tint, and the skin tones are quite magenta, and they don't have this like nice orange to it the way that the Canon has. So I had to go in and specifically target those tones and really manipulate them a bit more than I wanted to. It's a bit extra work, but it's just a minor inconvenience. With the higher bitrate and larger file size with the GH5, it was just a bit slower to edit. I had some playback issues. That's just a minor inconvenience that you're gonna get with higher quality footage. Either have to upgrade your computer or create proxies. Choice is up to you. I'm definitely happy that when I was starting out, I picked this T5i. It's a cheap option and it gives you great quality for what you pay for. Maybe you weren't into video, and if you bought an expensive camera at first, but then you're stuck with this giant investment. Even though this guy's done me wonders in the past and it was a great starter camera, it just doesn't have what I need out of it at this point in my career. At the end of the day, I am glad I upgraded to the GH5. Not just about the quality, but mainly about the features and ease of use it provides me as a creator. The most important part of any project you're doing is your idea, and then what equipment do you have that's going to help you create that idea in the most easy and efficient way as possible. Alright guys, that's everything for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and leave a comment down below asking any questions. I want to make videos for you guys, so please let me know, and that's everything for now. See you guys next week.